Testing sound, testing sound. Hey guys, just got home, took a shower, waiting for my food to get done, uh, fix some dinner. This is gonna be just a little bit of a different video. I promise you guys 7 o'clock, and yeah, I'm gonna give you guys 7 o'clock. So, and yeah, I kind of stole this from somebody doing this shit, but I'm gonna actually go ahead and pull up the start menu. Give me a second to actually get the shit that I need done for dinner, and then we can actually start the shit. And let's go.
is a Patreon. You can support me at patreon.com/Crimson60620 PS4 Gaming, and you can follow me at Facebook Crimson60620 PS4 Gaming. So your support, enjoy the video.
All right, guys. All right. What's up? So, everybody, here's my thing. Came home from work. And basically, I'm here. I had to actually fix my dinner. Didn't get a chance to eat it. That's why I'm eating it now. Red beans and rice is actually fucking delicious, but I wanted to commit to the time of the 7 o'clock. I was a little bit late. Sorry about that, but I still want to commit to that time. So, if you're joining me right now, I'm trying to do a streaming schedule where I can do more more streaming on time. And God, give me a second. Close that. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to put something in my stream. I apologize. Thank you for your patience. Come on. I was trying to do this a little bit earlier, but I keep forgetting. All right, good. Okay, cool. Thank you guys for your fucking patience. All right, go ahead and put that shit right there. And put that right here for everybody. Oh God. Like, I was supposed to do this like 3 episodes ago, but I just keep forgetting. And let me just put that shit right down there so you guys, it won't be too fucking distracting. All right, great. So, I'm looking for some commentary and shit like that. I don't even know what games I'm playing today. I just had a long ass stressful day at work. Although it is fun, I'm actually able to get back into my systems that I need to get back into. God, it's so distracting. Thank you. Shit. I'm trying to figure out what video that I want to do. Turn that shit off. But got an idea, so let's go ahead and put those headphones on. All right. So let's pull this up. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. What was I doing? Okay, yeah. Okay. All right, so let's get that right there. And let's just pull up another video. Let's pull up a video. I actually did watch. I was actually looking through my YouTube video. I was looking through YouTube, my suggested videos, and then I came up across a couple that I wanted to actually address. Nothing too bad. And yes, I fixed the sound issue. All right. Where'd it go? Wow, first time of that shit. So let's go to my watch later list. All right. Go down a little bit further. Yeah, cool. Let's talk about the fucking election. All right, hold on. Stop. All right, cool. This is what we're doing. And yeah, I'm gonna get to gaming in a second. I just gotta fucking eat. All right, so let's actually enjoy this shit. So if you're new to our channel, you'll actually see that I've done videos about Professor Richard Wolff before. And Professor Wolff is a Marxist economist. And he talks about different types of how socialism, not communism, can actually be a benefit for the economy. But let's go ahead and watch.
Welcome, friends, to another edition of Economic Update, a weekly program.
Hey, Mr. Matasoy, thanks you for the follow.
Host,
Thank you.
Today's
every time you follow, you'll see the alert pop up, and I want to thank everybody who follows or subscribe, depending on where you're actually watching. But let's go.
program takes into account the fact that Americans are beginning to look into the election, the big one for president coming up next year, 2020. And because it's becoming an issue and will, of course, become more of an issue as the months roll on, I thought it would be a good time to stop and take a look at the broader historical picture of American politics right up to the present. So I call today's program American History and the 2020 Election. If you're interested in this argument that I'm going to be presenting over the next little while during this program, I should also mention to you that a written version was published on the electronic magazine Counterpunch, which you can find at counterpunch.org, dated June 3rd, 2019.
All right. I mean, like, it's just like this man. If you saw that video that I did the other day, he has just a underlying contempt of how we're, as an economics, he has an underlying contempt of how we are fucking doing workers. Just in this principle that if you screw over workers, you actually screw over rich people as well, because if people don't have the money, then they can't buy the shit. But let's continue.
Of course, if I'm talking about the American working class, I don't mean to suggest that everybody who's in that working class, roughly 150 million Americans, our fellow citizens, agree on everything or act in the same way. There are important divisions of the working class. men and women, whites and blacks, skilled and unskilled, more educated, less educated, regional, South is different from the West, and so on. But there were things over the last 75 to 100 years that brought all working people, and by working people I mean what the government calls non-supervisory employees, the workers who do the work that makes this country work and function, producing and distributing goods and services, roughly 150 million non-supervisory workers. And they are important, not just because they make everything go around and produce the goods and services without which we couldn't live, but they were also very important because the system, capitalism, in which a relatively small minority of people, owners, CEOs, the people at the top, boards of directors, all of that, that's a very small part of our society. And they couldn't run it the way they do, have the power, have the wealth, have the income, if the mass of people, the vast majority, the non-supervisory working class, if that didn't allow this to continue, it wouldn't.
So, and this is the whole thing about supply and demand. What do you actually focus your focus on? So you actually get it where you get a lot of people that say, give the rich their money and it'll trickle down on us like piss. Like it has been for the last fucking 40 years. It hasn't been working, and it leads to a lot of fucking unrest. Because in the end, people don't want people don't want to lose what they have. And, fuck that. Because if you're exploiting people to get more and more, you're fucking gonna lose what you have. We have a world where the French Revolution happened. And hold on, guys, give me a second. I'm actually gonna check one thing. I'll be right back. Stop. I don't want to run into the side of the road. I'll be right back. Yes, my motherfucking cornbread. It's done. Alright guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. I had to get did I tell you I was making cornbread? I was making motherfucking cornbread. Where's my controller? Okay. But yeah, let's let Professor Wolff continue.
So it has always been necessary for those at the top to find allies in the working class to survive, let alone to have the system work. And that's what we're going to be sketching. So our story starts, back in the 1930s in the Great Depression. It starts there because capitalism crashed big time. In 1929, suddenly, an economy that had been booming along basically since the Civil War, growing richer, faster than even its old parent, Britain, could do, as fast or faster than the only other quickly growing country at the time, Germany, could do. It was a success story of exploding wealth. We killed off enough of the Native Americans in this country to allow an immense expansion of the immigrants from Europe across this country. The wealth created the great names of that time. The Rockefellers, the Carnegies, all of those people who got called by the name that most people understood applied. They were called robber barons, and they became extremely wealthy. And they celebrated a system that made them wealthy. And they convinced everyone pretty well that the wealth and the growth in this country was somehow their doing. Not the work of the mass of people, but the genius of the captains of industry.
So, that shit sounds familiar. That, you had people who lived off the back of the working and the working poor and the poor. And they say, well, we did it ourselves. No, no, no. Poor workers? What was that? Industrialization? What is that? Who decided that industrialization was the reason why a lot of people actually started, a lot of rich people actually started being, determined? Ha! No. It's all capital. It's all our doing. We're the reason why. And you workers should be thankful that we're allowing you to get money. Quite literally, that was something that Ford actually, for all his racism and stupid shit like that, Ford was like, look, let's motherfucking give these people a day off. Let's not try to work them to death. One, because they're costing me production. And two, if they're poor and can't work, then fuck, I'm stuck. Okay, so let's try doing that. There we go. Maybe if we give them more money and time off, they can buy our shit. But let's continue.
The robber barons. And they did a pretty good job of convincing people until the crash of 1929. When suddenly this great capitalist system, with all of these rich Rockefellers, etc., at the helm, fell apart. Between 1929 and 1933, there was a continuing collapse. By 1933, the unemployment rate in the United States was 25%. That means 1 out of 4 people were without a job, which means every family had either a mama or a papa or a cousin or an uncle without work, and therefore was affected. Whatever savings people had accumulated were quickly used up. Because there was no support for unemployed people, there was no unemployment compensation system, then people had nowhere to turn. The desperation was captured in novels like
The Grapes of
Mice and Men.
Of Mice and Men was actually just a key thing where you actually saw a lot of people, just that desperation there, like he said. Or another one, I believe it was The Grapes of Wrath was also another one. It's just where you had this sense of like, we're all fucked. Like, people would make burlap saps. They would make fucking clothes out of burlap saps because after they had the flour and shit, they couldn't, they didn't have a way of buying clothes. So it was like food or clothes and shit. Let's make this burlap saps, clothes. You're wearing the shit that your food came in. But let's continue.
Or the other great works of Steinbeck, Dreiser, and the other novelists of the time, The Grapes of Wrath, that you may remember when you read them as a high school or college student. And in that collapse, the mass of the American working class finally saw through the pretenses of a capitalism. They saw what capitalism could deliver. Not the goods, but the really bads. And the American working class drew a conclusion. And the conclusion was the political party that represented capitalism, the support of capitalism, the wealth of the rich capitalists, the Republicans, were the people that were not working men and women's friend. They turned and placed their hopes in a new direction. Some of them decided to go with the Democratic Party. At least it wasn't the Republicans. At least it showed some sympathy. And many of them decided to do something much more dramatic. They joined labor unions in a way that Americans had never done before. The greatest wave of labor organization in the history of the United States took place in the depths of the Depression of the 1930s.
So more people actually tried to come together in a way where they can actually use more of their working power in order to say, hey, capitalists, give us more shit. We can barely survive. And that's actually a really good thing. And that's something that we have moved away from because reasons. Because people had been convinced that, we're at the end of times. There quite literally was a movement to say, we're the end of history. We can never go any further. In the 1980s. So I'm going to let that shit sink and sit in right now. I got to get some fucking fertilizer. I think you get fertilizer from here. Where's the fertilizer? Shit. I think I have to go back to my house. My farm. It should be some fertilizer around here. Shit. I could have sworn there's some fertilizer around here. But let's continue.
Millions of Americans who had never been in a union before, whose parents had never had anything to do with unions before, decided the best way to get through the hard times of a terrible depression were to unify with other workers and work together to make something happen. Those who were even more upset by what was happening to them and to the economic system they thought they could rely on, they joined two socialist parties and the Communist Party. And those parties became very important in American history at that time. And indeed, there was a coalition, an alliance between the Communist Party, the Socialist parties, the labor organizers under the heading of the CIO, the Congress of Industrial Organizations. And they went to the then newly elected President of the United States, a Democrat, brought in because of the upset with the Republicans that had been boasting of the great achievements of capitalism. They went to that new president and they said, we put you in office. You're here to help us through this terrible depression. If you do, we will celebrate you. And if you don't, we will vote you out.
Oh, wow. Just imagine if we had that motherfucking threat now. If we had that threat of motherfucking power from electorates instead of it being, well, can you please, kind sir, can you please give us some shit that we need to live? No, motherfucker. We voted you in and we will vote you out. That's why we need to get money out of politics. Where the politicians will be more afraid of their voters than there are of their donors. But let's continue.
The communists, the socialists, and the unions. And together they represented tens of millions of people. And the president, Mr. Roosevelt, got the message. He went back to the rich people he came from and the big leaders of business that he was one of. And he said, I just had a meeting with the communist socialists and the unionists, and they basically read me the riot act.
So, yeah, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was actually a business leader. He was. He came from money. I think he was nephew of Teddy Roosevelt, who in and of itself did a lot of reforms for, the working poor and shit like that. He's the one who started the conservationists. And yes, he was a quote-unquote Republican, but he actually kind of destroyed the Republican Party as well. Actually, let me take the time, and I don't want to, because I know he started the, he's a term where you get the bully pulpit. So let's call it Teddy Roosevelt. All right. And this is a relation of where he actually came from. He was a conservationist, a naturalist. And don't at me. It's, of course, it's Wikipedia. Don't at me, dog. Don't at me. So this is where Franklin Delano Roosevelt came from. Good old boy Teddy. And I see a fucking problem. Alright, so he was a Republican. He became the driving force of actually progressives. And yeah, he became of the progressive era. And here with Taft, he became frustrated with Taft, and he ran in with a split that allowed the Democrat Woodrow Wilson, who was a fucking failure. He fought for he fought to fight the Nazis. And political. And he was also like, he used like press propaganda to actually sell the cause. But I'm getting off topic. Let's get back to the video.
I better help those people, the mass of Americans, through this depression, or I'm out of here. And gentlemen, he said, looking at them, there are very few ladies present in that room, he said, I advise you to go with me in this effort. Because if you don't, these people are very angry. They're already talking, particularly those socialists and communists, about a revolution here. You know, like the one they had in Russia just a few years ago, back in 1917, which wasn't that long ago when you're talking in the early 30s. So, he finished his conversation, Mr. Roosevelt did, to the rich people. He said the government has no money. With millions of people unemployed, businesses falling apart, nobody's paying taxes. The government can't help these people. The only way to help these people is to get money, and the only people who have money are you. You corporate leader, you wealthy billionaire, etc. So you've got to give me the money that I can take care of the mass of people. And I urge you to do it, because if you don't, there's a good chance those people will remove whatever money you have, and you won't be in a position to give anybody anything. Half of those businesses bought Mr. Roosevelt's argument. And they said, okay. And Mr. Roosevelt then went and did something.
All right, so here's the thing. And this is why. So, I was an Obama supporter. I voted for him twice because I fucking hated the other two people that he ran against. Because I'm not stupid. I know that John McCain's plan and definitely Mitt Romney's plan was just bullshit. But I also would say this. We dropped the ball. We let people say, oh, Barack Obama was in and never put pressure. Somebody should have went in there with the fucking riot act and said, look, motherfucker, you have a short, very short time to get shit together. But no one did. As a matter of fact, Barack Obama was punked by the fucking Republicans. Quite literally, they said, our goal is to make him a one-term president. Now, the people fought back against because nobody wanted to be in anything driven by Mitt Romney, even his fucking dog. But we succeeded. And it was lulled into this false sense of hope. That's why you got motherfucking Trump as a fucking president, because people say, oh no, people will never elect him. And I will say this, the moment I saw the fucking Cubs won the World Series in 2016, I was like, that's it. Because I looked at the people, how they were celebrating, finally our team, finally something is looking up for us. And the people that were fucking celebrating that shit, I was like, these motherfuckers gonna come out in force because they feel that Donald Trump is their savior. And it was bullshit. Because that's what the fuck they did. But let's continue.
And what he did was to take money from the rich, taxing them very highly, borrowing what he didn't tax from them, basically telling them that they had no choice. And he used the money to create the Social Security system, to suddenly go to all American families and say, you're elderly, you're people 65 years of age and older, I'm going to give them a check, a government Social Security check, every month for the rest of their lives. He created the unemployment compensation system. For the first time, you lose a job through no fault of your own, the government will give you a check every week for a year or two to help you through. Number 3, a minimum wage. We never had that before in America, just like we never had a Social Security system before, or unemployment compensation. Suddenly, if you had a job, you couldn't be paid below a certain amount because it was indignant for you and without dignity for the society to treat people this way. What an idea. And finally, the government hiring program.
So that is a key thing. When it comes to Social Security. But let's just start with the whole thing about unemployment insurance. That took power away from your boss or things of that nature to say, you're going to put up with this bullshit because if you get fired, you can't feed yourself, let alone feed your family or any other responsibilities that you have. That gave people more sense of security. Social Security. Fuck this bullshitty ass 401k that everybody has. It was a guaranteed income to make sure you weren't fucking starving. And these systems have been constantly rolled back because when it comes down to it, the rich people can't live with the state because it can take your money, can't live without it because if they not protecting your money, then other people can come take your money, but don't want to pay for it. And yeah, the rich were fucking taxed at a high number, and it gave more security. Now, you can probably say that some people took advantage of that, and it was not evenly applied towards different categories of people, like African Americans, women, things of that nature, but at least it was a clawback from where we were. Well, let's continue.
Program. Roosevelt telling the American people, if the private capitalists of this country can't or won't hire millions of Americans who only ask for a job, then I will as president, and he did. He hired roughly 15 million people between 1934 and 41.
So this was also another key thing, and they made a joke about it. It was actually a really funny but effective joke, and it wasn't too much of a hyperbole. The government will come and hire you to dig a hole, and then the next day they'll hire somebody else to come fill the hole. Under Roosevelt, he laid the groundworks for the interstate system. He laid the ground. You already had some of the standardization of the railroad system. With these government projects, you actually saw a lot of good things actually happen, and people had jobs. They weren't looking for fucking handouts. And quite frankly, they worked hard for it. And this is the amount of socialism that I promote. I mean, like, give somebody a motherfucking job, and don't put like how they got welfare requirements where, oh no, you have to do this, that, and another in order to seem like you're a productive member of the society, but you're basically punishing people for certain things. Hell, maybe let's start a program where you have tech programs where I gotta get some more grass feed. Where you have, people that's hired to do tech things. Let's not have contractors building fucking roads. Let's hire them directly by cities and states, so the cities and states can fucking make sure that people are taken care of. But let's continue.
The American working class could not believe what they had accomplished. Through that alliance of the communists, the socialists, and the unions, they had gotten a president to tax the rich and the corporations to provide a vast program of help and support to working men and women, the working class. And the working class made a commitment. This is our guy, Mr. Roosevelt. And so they turned to his party, the Democratic Party, and said, this is the party of the working class.
Yes.
And we're going to support you. And how powerful was it? Well, let's see. Mr. Roosevelt was president 4 times. He was reelected 3 times by overwhelming support of the American working class. It became the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party became it.
All right, so 2 things. One, also because, World War II was happening. 2, yeah, the people fucking like FDR. People loved him. That's the fucked up part about it is people love Teddy Roosevelt, and I think it was his nephew overshadowed him. Now, also, the Democratic Party hasn't been the party of the workers recently because they've been a party of also corporation shit. But let's continue.
It's an extraordinary story, and it's where the politics of this country were shaped in a profound way. The role of the Democratic Party and of Roosevelt was simple. Capitalism as a system, if left in the hands of private enterprises, capitalists, and big corporations, can and will blow itself up and produce catastrophes like the Great Depression. And the only way to manage that, to prevent it from happening over and over again, is to bring the government in a massive intervention of an ongoing sort, like Social Security, unemployment compensation, minimum wage legislation, and federal jobs when the private sector can't provide a living wage to everybody who needs and wants one. What a commitment. And who's to pay for it? Big business.
Okay, so this is what I never got about austerity as a government principle. And Mark Black touches about this. When nobody is spending money no one is spending money. So why, as a government, would you actually try to fucking cut your budget as well? If every part of the fucking economy is contracting, why would the government say as well as every part of the economy is contracting, let's contract as well, a forced contraction? Because what ends up happening is if nobody has the money to spend, then nothing gets bought. People go hungry. Jobs are lost. So, yes, you can get mad that most of the money in the bailout went to the banks. Fuck, get mad about that. But that's because capitalists and fucking investors actually said, if you don't give us money, we're gonna motherfucking take our ball and go home. And one of these days, I'm gonna actually go through the chapters of. I'm gonna actually do a book review of austerity, which is actually, I got part of the way through it, but I was trying to read it at work, and that's a book that you have to take the time to read on its own. So I'm actually going to probably do just a series of videos talking about it. But let's go ahead and continue.
And the rich. And that set the tone for what the Democratic Party did. But it also set the tone for what the business community would do next. Confronted by a massive defeat, they had to pay. They had to pay taxes like they had never paid before to fund a program of helping the mass of people. They had been made to be the problems of our society, the robber barons who cared for profits but not for the condition of the American people. Capitalism had given itself a black eye, and the Democratic Party pointed at it and said, never again. And the business community was horrified.
All right, so yeah, this was a lesson that capitalism actually learned. Like, they fucking actually they took a L. They took a big L. They took a big motherfucking L for just the system that they created, because they ran amok where income inequality was just rampant and horrible. Wow. I don't know a time where it's ever been as bad as that was or is. I mean, no, right now the income inequality is not as bad as in the 1920s. It's fucking worse. But no, it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. It's everything is gonna be okay. It's not like we're in the middle of a fucking recession right now, where the 2-year bonds are doing better than the 10-year bonds, which is a sign of the recession, as a way that has predicted all the recessions. But no, that's not a problem. But let's continue.
Would they have to pay big taxes forever in this system? Would they not be on top of it? Would they be having to be responsible? No, they said. And the rest of this story is how American politics were changed after Mr. Roosevelt was gone. We've come to the end of the first half of this program. So before I, having teased you a bit, take you to the next step, bringing it up to the present, I want to remind you, please, to follow us on YouTube, YouTube/Democracy at Work. That's how you can find this program. And supporting us that way is an enormous encouragement in a very practical way for us. Please make use of our websites, rdwolff.com and democracyatwork.info.
All right, and you know what? Is that part of the video? So I don't know if I am subscribed to this channel. Okay, cool. I am subscribed to this channel. I gotta take those off. Okay, that's Democracy Now. This is Democracy at Work. Okay, cool. This is actually pretty. It's a pretty interesting story. The villains, they had fucked up, and they were beaten by the, what would you call it? Not undeserved, but the unwanted position of the Messiah of Franklin Delano Roosevelt by the motherfuckers who's gonna come and introduce a new version of Dr. Guillotine. So what do we have next? How does a villainous capitalist come back and save the day for their cause? But let's continue.
And as always, a special thanks to the Patreon community, whose support and encouragement is crucial to every program we produce. Stay with us. We will be right back. Welcome back, friends, to the second half of today's...
I don't know if like, they do that shit all the time, and I don't think it's a live broadcast, so I think they do take breaks between the breaks. And it doesn't look like they have commercial breaks at all. I don't think the channel's monetized at all, but maybe this is meant to be a public broadcast channel. I don't know. Let's continue.
Economic update. We had taken our story of the American working class's history through the Great Depression and even to the end of World War II. And that was the crucial time, because the Depression was now over. The working class had embraced the Democratic Party of Franklin Roosevelt and vice versa. The war had put Americans back to work. Half of the unemployed took on a uniform. The other half went to work producing the uniforms and guns and ships and all the rest. And so 1945 is the crucial end of the Depression, the return of people to jobs, and the death of Mr. Roosevelt. And that.
So this is what's kind of weird. Everybody wants to go back to the 50s and 60s, where it was the demure life and fuck, women used to work in the fucking factories. Rosita Rivers and all that other good shit. Nobody was worried about, oh, a woman can't do this job because she can't put the plane together, right? No, she used to do that shit, and it wasn't a fucking issue. They used to put together the bullets and the guns and all this other good shit. But it wasn't a problem then. What changed? Oh yeah, a generation of weak motherfuckers was born. And they had said, we have to dominate women. They don't know their place anymore. Yeah. Yeah, motherfucker. That's what happened. Women forgot their place. I wonder why you say that. It's because they got a taste of not having to always deal with your bullshit. Or worse yet, I wouldn't even say that. It was because it wasn't even them. It was the kids in that time frame. The men, they didn't give a fuck because they had, like, you start seeing the growth of alternative lifestyles and all this other. You start seeing people actually doing wife swapping. You start seeing people not having to worry about the whole, you know. You saw a veneer of certain things, and I'm not talking about a venereal, but you saw a veneer of certain things. But people were more free and open. Look at the people who were in the 60s, born in the 60s. It's just like, I don't know. It just seems to me that people keep forgetting certain shit are actually good. But nah, let's continue.
That was the opportunity for the reaction, for the Republican Party to lead the way in pushing back against all that had been accomplished in the 1930s, undoing what had been done. That thing had been called the New Deal, so now the agenda was to undo the New Deal. And the way the Republican Party and the business community, working very closely together, did that was to destroy the New Deal coalition. That combination of communists and socialists on the one hand and unions on the other. The working classes leadership congealed in those groups, communists, socialists, and labor unions, had to be destroyed so that the Republicans could then find allies within the working class to pull over to their side so it wouldn't face them in the devastatingly successful run of the Democrats under four presidencies of Mr. Roosevelt. So here's how they did it. First, they went after the communists. They were not leaders.
So, this is a key thing. The whole, if we don't stand separately, we're going to hang. If we don't stand together, we're going to hang separately. This is always divide and conquer. Hey, we want to keep slaves because they make us profit. So let's tell poor white farmers that they're going to take your shit sooner or later. Let's do that. Let's have that problem. Like, quite literally, that has been the key of, I want to keep my money. Let's divide these people instead of working together. Well, instead of having to work together, because they may have the money, but we have the people. Think about that. But let's continue.
Of a working class, they were evil agents of a foreign power, and you got rid of them. The minute you finished, you did the same to the socialists and said they were the same as the communists. They just spelled it in a different way. And you taught Americans to be very frightened of all of that and very hostile. And Russia became the great enemy. This is step one. Break the coalition. Step two, you hobble the labor movement. The Taft-Hartley Act of 1946, a law which said anything that a trade union won at a workplace had to be given to everybody who worked there, whether or not they were members of the union, whether or not they had gone out on strike when the union called them to do that, whether or not they paid dues to the union, which gave everybody an incentive to be a free rider, to get the benefits of labor without being part of the union movement. And that marks the beginning of the downhill run of the labor movement, which was eviscerated in this way. Businesses decided they could make more money by going out of the country. You began that hemorrhaging of jobs out of the country to cheap labor somewhere else, which the unions couldn't fight because they were fighting a battle to survive the onslaught of the government's attack on them. It worked.
So, and this is just like, okay, so thank you, Sadita. If I've mispronounced that, I'm sorry. So, one of the things that kind of hurt just a lot of things. People lost that whole. The left has no fucking teeth anymore, and that's a shame because that's how even the political argument now about different things, different movements, the left has no fucking teeth anymore. First, you get rid of the commies, and the thing about the commies is they're evil because they're socialists, or it's that they're evil because look at Russia. Look at what Russia did. Okay, so you get rid of them. You have the McCarthy trials, and you have the socialist trials, and the socialists, well, they're just as bad as the commies, even though they're actually saying that, one of our most popular programs in the fucking country is called Social Security. It just means coming together as a society, as a fucking, society in a social way to actually look out for shit. You don't have to actually believe and get rid of private property to be a socialist. No, it just means that society's interests are against business interests. And if they are in line, you want to tend more to society's interests, not just business interests. But you still have both of them there. And then the unions. How do you fucking destroy a union? Deprive it of its way of fighting back against capitalists. And how do you do that? Well, take away their money. Force them to make do with less resources to fight the capitalists. And you know what that led to? That led to just weaker and weaker unions. Or, in some cases, like fucking, certain people named Hoffa, you pay off union bosses. I'm not saying, but I'm just saying. There were people that were corrupt, that were heads of unions. And you pay them off. But let's continue.
Worked. The long and the short of it is, it worked. The New Deal coalition was broken up. Part of the effort was also to send the women who had been pulled into the labor force during World War II when the men went off to fight.
Exactly.
Women. Rosie the Riveter became workers everywhere in America. Now, after the war, the Republicans led the charge. Women must go back in the household. A woman wasn't a hero if she was doing the work that the men used to do and doing her part for the war effort. No. She became a person who ought to be at home, who ought to be taking care of children. The whole women's liberation movement is born out of women being pushed back to a subordinate household role that was not valued, and yet they were told they were to do it. Black people who had begun to emerge from the Jim Crow segregation of the past into the modern American working class alongside white people. They were pushed back and made bad in various ways. White workers were told they really are different from black workers. The opposite of the message of the 1930s.
Exactly. God damn it.
Built up the divisions within the working class to break them apart, to stop them from being unified, that capitalism was their problem and that the Democratic Party would be the party that would save them from what capitalists would otherwise be prepared to do to them again. And it worked in large part. The working class, the labor movement, the communists, fell apart. Women and men started playing the old roles again, not the new ones. Segregation and race hostilities were revved up again, where they hadn't survived so well before. And so the working class fractured, and the Republicans were able to make real gains, to be the champion of white against black, to be the champion of the male worker on the job, less the women. You could see the whole modern identity politics being born in this onslaught to undo the New Deal. And what did the Democratic Party do? Did it go to their roots and say, no, we're going to be the united working class? No. They didn't know how to fight this battle.
So what they started doing is, well, they started buying into it too. They started saying, give us the money and we'll protect you a little bit. And they started telling workers, well, this is just a little bit and it's okay. We're going to make sure that we need to win elections, and what are we supposed to do? Take half of the corruption, half of the money? I swear to God, this motherfucker is too big. Oh my God, this motherfucker is too big. That's why I'm having a problem with it. Okay, so I know what to do now. But let's continue.
They too were hobbled. They didn't rely on their left wing because those were tarred with the brush of communism and socialism. So they fell for that kind of splitting, and they split. So a new generation of Democrats, led by people like Bill Clinton, emerged, who said, okay, if we can't hold on to the working class, maybe we can keep our party going by appealing to the capitalists. The party not of Franklin Roosevelt, but the party of the other side. If the Republicans split the working class and hurt us, we'll split the capitalist class and pull over a bunch of them to support us. And what you have is the result. Two political parties, both of whom begging for money from the rich and the powerful and the capitalists, and each of them with a hand on part of the working class.
Exactly.
The Republicans more and more white and male, and the Democrats more and more female, non-white, minority, the modern picture that we're used to. But both parties unwilling and unable to challenge capitalism because they depend on the same funders. They depend on the same support from that part. They could not maintain their oppositional position that they had developed in the 30s. And the man who comes to power and puts it all together, Ronald Reagan, he takes the step to finish the job. He begins his presidency by throwing the air traffic controllers out of their jobs, showing that he is going to crunch down on what remains of the labor movement.
And that was a signal to say, if you're a worker, fuck you. It was at the end of his, and he was such a fucking puppet, an idiot star that knew shit all about dick all. And he was quite literally racist. You start your campaign in a city known for killing fucking people that wanted to make sure minorities voted. Fucking racist, dog. But let's continue.
And he is going to celebrate globalization. Of course we'll help American companies that want to go abroad. Of course we'll help American companies that want to use this new invention of the computer to get rid of millions of jobs, throwing people into the chaos of unemployment and hunting for a new job. The power of the business community rebuilt as it was before the Great Depression. and the American working class split. And Mr. Reagan gets enough of particularly what? White male workers to pull enough away from the Democratic Party to get power. And Mr. Clinton, who comes afterwards, he has given up. He supports the same capitalists. He supports globalization. He supports all of it. His only claim to the mass of the working class is, look, you should vote for me, not Mr. Reagan, because I'll soften it. I mean, I'll do the same stuff he does, but I won't do it so harshly. I won't do it so quickly. Yeah, you'll lose your job to a computer, but I'll give you some help along the way so it won't be as bad as those Republicans will let it be. The Democrat...
This is the whole triangulation that you saw with Clinton, and it was just bullshit. It was quite literally bullshit, but let's continue.
It's become Republican light. And that's not a winning strategy. Not at all.
Fuck.
Because the white working class, the men and the white men who supported mostly the Republicans, because the Republicans went after them, they are getting upset, as are the women and the blacks and the others, because across all this period, whether it's Reagan or it's Clinton, whether it's the old Republicans or the underlying reality is both of those parties are letting capitalism do what it does. Replace people with machines, move jobs abroad, build up the profits, and neglect the conditions of the mass of people. And people get angry. It takes a while. It takes decades. But across the 80s and 90s and the first decade of this century, all of these processes are at work until finally the working class is angry enough to say, we don't care whether it's the Reagan Republicans or the Clinton Democrats. This is all the same. We want something different.
All right, cool. And here's the thing. This dynamic didn't change much. You saw it with Barack Obama. You saw it with, you damn sure saw it with George Bush, where it was more of the, during Bush's first election, yeah, it was more of the, let's try to squeeze the middle, take more out of the middle. But yeah, this is some shit. This is the shit that we're dealing with right now. Now, let's let him continue.
There is a memory, an echo, a historical trace of what they remember, even if it was their parents told them about it back in the 1930s. And they want something different. For a while, you can begin to see it as each candidate for president says to the audience as he begins his effort, I'm not like every other politician. Oh, I wonder why you're saying that. I'm something new and different, because that's what people wanted to hear. And then along comes a character, a narcissist, a baby,
God.
a boaster.
Sad baby. Like, quite literally. Oh my God. This shit is hilarious. The way he just, like, setting this motherfucking orange buffoon up. God damn it. Like, he just has contempt for this motherfucker. And maybe because, and I grant people who fucking hate Donald Trump, just as a matter of principle, that he's a narcissistic, ignorant little baby that still has fucking daddy issues, even though his father's been dead for decades now, that brags about, he has to brag about his penis size during the presidential debate. And I'm telling you this, and ladies, you can motherfucking actually probably agree. The guys who brag about their penis size or their prowess usually are the ones that don't satisfy. If you gotta brag about it, then you have a fucking problem. But let's continue.
Mr. Trump. And he says, I'm different from all the Republicans. And he looks it and he acts it and he speaks it. And he defeats all of the old Republicans inside that party. And then he defeats the Clinton other side in the other party. And he becomes the president because the working class was so angry at what had been done to them in the rollback of the New Deal. by Republicans and Democrats, with the only difference being the Democrats did it a little slower. They were so angry they wanted somebody different, and if the only offer of something really different was Mr. Trump, well, they'll surprise everybody, raising their collective middle finger and vote for that. Really hoping it'll make a change? No. Maybe. But what's to lose?
So yeah, Trump was a middle finger at the establishment, just like that guy who's becoming prime minister in fucking England. It's a middle finger to the motherfucking establishment. And the problem is, when you're saying fuck the establishment, people, if they have power over the establishment, they also have power over you. And you fucked yourself. Just ask the farmers. Just ask the people that's losing their business because of the tax. The tax cuts only went to the top 1%. Just ask the people, who have technically lost money when you factor in the what the fuck is that called? The rate of inflation, the cost of living inflation. People have fucking lost money under President Trump. But let's continue.
Lose, as Mr. Trump himself said. So here we have it. We have the working class has been crucial at every step of the way, in allowing, in coming forward, in retreating, in allowing the destruction of its institutions that had protected it. You know, in Europe, none of this kind of thing happened in the same way. Why? Because the working class did not suffer the kind of crushing that happened here. They held on to their socialist parties. They held on to their communist parties. And they held on to their unions, which is why you couldn't do in Italy or France or Germany or Scandinavia
quite literally
the capitalists could do here after the war, which is why they have universal health insurance and subsidized colleges and all the things that Americans vaguely dream of, which they have and they will not let go in Europe.
Okay, cool. I know what's
So the American working class is at a kind of crossroads, isn't it? What's it?
So here's the thing. Like, American mindset of brought into this fucking exceptionalism has been totally shitty because in the end it fucks everybody else. I'm guilty of it myself. There are certain things that I would actually give people, and the exceptionalism means that we're the best and we don't need any help or shit like that. And I'm guilty of it myself. I was having a conversation with my friend, and I was saying that I afford people more charity than I afford myself because I'm an adult and I should be able to take care of myself. I should be able to make ends meet and shit like that. And it's fucking hard to actually admit sometimes that, hey, you may need help, but we've grown up in this culture, this mindset where, we have to be self-sufficient. You have to stand on your own and all this other good bullshit. Where why? No one man is a motherfucking island. But let's continue.
What's it gonna do now? Is it gonna realize that the unity of the white and black and men and women and African Americans and on, is it gonna pull that all together? And why? Because that's what you won the last time in the 1930s. And that's what you lost since then. And no way is Mr. Trump going to bring you any of that back. He's one of them, even if he acts the bully and acts the crazy. He's one of them. He's part of the rollback of the New Deal. And the Democratic Party in 2020 will have to face that. If they go for someone like Mr. Biden, they're saying to the American working class, we've learned nothing from this history. We're going to give you more of what you've shown us you will reject. First when you voted for Reagan, and again when you voted for Trump. Another one of those losers? Or are you going to go in a direction of unity? Unity of a working class across all these divisions. With someone more like Mr. Sanders, or more like others. It doesn't have to be him, and it doesn't even have to be any of the declared people now. It has to be something new and different in terms of the
Let's see if this
recent history,
works.
but something old that we've learned from in terms of what the Democratic Party was in the 1930s. What it was, it can be again. But the question is when and how and who will make that happen. And this election coming up in 2020 is a first step in figuring out whether the Democratic Party can rise to this situation, and if it can't, whether new and different parties will have
What
to
the
emerge
fuck, man?
that do learn the lesson of the history of the American working class and its relationship to politics, and therefore can make a difference and surprise
This shit
everybody
is pissing me off.
from the left, the way Mr. Trump's victory surprised everyone from the right. I hope.
All right, so that was actually a pretty good not campaign, but a pretty good expository lesson on the failures of always thinking that you won and stop fighting. When you're thinking of cultural things. Wow, I can't talk right now. And I use that excuse a lot, but fuck it. When you think of cultural things where you think, hey, we won this social reform. Now, what the fuck are we going to do with it? And you have people who says, well, we've gotten this far. Let's make sure that we can go further or things of that nature. And it's like, god damn. Like, don't get to a place where you think that as soon as you win this particular fight, there's not another one on the horizon, because there will be another fight. There will be people who says, well, I don't like this system because I'm not at the top. So let me turn the gears of power in order to get what I want. Fuck. It's a reason. What's up, Panda? Thank you, man. Thank you. We're going to have to game sometime soon. But it's like you get these people who say, well, we're going to get to a perfect utopian society. And this is one of the agreements that I have about the economic systems that Destiny has. As much as I think that he in a lot of cases is a dick about it. Like how when people attack him, he attacked them back. But the thing about it is, like, you're never going to get to a utopian system. So never plan that you will get to the utopian system and you'll stop fighting. No, keep fighting for the system that you fucking want. Because as soon as you think that you've won that system, there's going to be somebody that comes around and smacks that shit back. Come on, guys. Let's fucking do this. Let's fucking fight. But let's see. Can we get to another video tonight? It's 8:30, so I got enough time. I want to probably stop streaming by 10. What else do I have? I quite literally have just a wealth of different videos that I like. This is the one we just did. So no. Let me put that back in because I actually have to add that to. I want to at least put the name of the title, something that's been happening with my being able to actually get the link. So let's go back. Oh, fun. Let's do this. I guess it's Richard Wolff night.
Welcome, friends, to another edition of Economic Update, a weekly program devoted to the economic dimensions of our lives: jobs, incomes, debts, our own, our children's. I'm your host, Richard Wolff. I'm going to continue today with a program that we have been developing over the last several months, in which basic issues that you're concerned about, that you write to us about, become the subject for an entire program. And today, that subject is the relationship between modern socialism on the one hand and the movement to create worker co-ops on the other. The relationship between these two has become very intimate, let's call it, very close. And I want to explain why and what the implications of that are. First,
Ass.
socialism has been going
An
through,
ass.
particularly over the last 30 to 40 years,
Now, mind you,
an
this is a
intense
bull, and I know it's
period
just a
of
mule.
self-criticism and transformation. And that's as it should be. A healthy movement, a healthy system, is one that questions itself, it changes itself when it finds flaws, failures, and so forth. Every system has strengths and weaknesses. It is healthy to identify the latter, for sure, and do something about them.
So, and I gotta have this, and I promise, guys, the next time I stream and mention it, I'm gonna actually make sure that I actually find out exactly who came up with this principle. I want to say it's about the golden mean and about synthesis and all that other good shit. Sometimes you have to take some parts of a idea thought process, and I actually see socialism as a way of still keeping an investor class, but also as a way of having workers have more control, because that's the thing. And I'm a big fan of having everybody at each other's neck, figuratively, of course, figuratively. I'm a big fan of fucking conflict, because in the end, when you think your side is winning, you become lackadaisical, you become lethargic, you become complacent. And I'm a big fan of saying, like, hey, you know what? Let's make sure that we know that there's a fucking struggle. But that's just me, you know. Okay, you need to pop. I know I can actually put more stuff somewhere. This is pissing me off. Alright, so, well, let's continue.
And that's what socialism has been doing. And socialism identified one of its weaknesses as being an overconcentration of power in the hands of a state apparatus. And it has asked itself, this movement of socialism, what went wrong there? How do you deal with that problem? Are there forms of socialism that can make sure, in some basic way, not
Okay, cool.
to produce too much power in the hands of too few people in a state apparatus? And worker co-ops, as I will show, is a way to do that.
So here's the thing again. This is what, like, if you watch my other videos where I had volume, and I'm pissed. That was those two great videos that I love. That I'm not gonna pretend like I didn't hear the points, but I would say that, you know, and this goes back to what I was just saying about people always being in conflict, and it doesn't have to be violent conflict. That's not what I'm saying, but people have to be in conflict and saying that, hey, this benefits us not to be an asshole or treat our workers like an asshole, and workers saying it benefits us not to fucking demand like free shit all the time. It's about going to a mean. It's about, you know, making sure that both sides get some of what they want. Not the whole everybody's gonna be disappointed bullshit, but both sides of an argument gets some of what they actually need. And this is one of those key things where I just say, like, hey, fuck, we need to make sure that this is the point where you have the government actually step in as a referee. And I think even before I actually started diving into these terms, I've always felt the government should be more of a referee versus a top-down thing where, listen to us, but a just referee. An objective, not neutral, but objective. It's a difference between the two of them. And it's been alarming. It's been alarming how, quite frankly, we start to see these people who want to capture government to get their domination. That's not a good thing for anybody. But let's continue.
But before I go on, I want to contrast a socialism that is going through self-criticism with a global capitalism that is not doing that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I keep forgetting this shit. if you can, please like and subscribe. Please share this screen. Please let people know that I am here doing fucking commentary and gaming while I am doing commentary while I'm gaming. It's part of the way of me having the and I know this is kind of a weird place to put it, but it's part of me actually playing video games, listening to YouTube, and I just wanted you guys to see some of the shit that I actually did while I streamed. But this is just neither here nor there. I'm just like, it's just one of the reasons why I like to actually say shit. Panda actually reminded me, like, this is just some of the shit that I like to do. I'm not just a gamer. I like politics and shit like that. So I used to game and watch TV. Now you guys suffer with me while I think of this shit, and actually think about all the other things. And I may actually do other videos, maybe critiques of certain shit that I find. But, you know, this is just me. But let's go.
And therein lies a big story. When capitalism is in a declining phase, which I believe it currently is, it is perhaps not surprising that its chief spokesmen and women are afraid to confront their failures and flaws, afraid of self-criticism, because their system, they hope, will somehow last longer if they pretend it doesn't have flaws and failures. Let me give you an example.
So before he gets into the example, I'm actually going to get into this. And God, please don't tell me this is about to happen. I don't want to get actually I got a copyright for this shit because I was playing Burnout. And we heard this with our video with Mark Blight, where he was like, the shocks in the system doesn't destroy capitalism. It makes it stronger because it forces it to adapt. Now, do I think... Here's the thing. I think socialism in the form of the one of the truest forms about how things are looked at, not in control by the government, but as the government as a kind of a referee, as I was explaining earlier, is the next evolution. It's okay to be rich, dog. It's okay to have a little bit more wealth because nothing can ever be completely even. There is no magic system where there are people who everybody will have the same. That's not the case. Not because people don't have different abilities. It's quite literally because people want different shit. What I consider wealthy, some people would scoff at, and hold on, next to my seat. What I consider wealth for myself, people would actually scoff at because I don't want to be like fucking rich. I think it's more trappings than not. But that doesn't mean that I want to actually not kind of grow or learn on some shit where it's actually beneficial. No, I fucking really want to do that. I want to actually get to a point where I can actually subsist off of my art or this shit. Or a combination, a mixture of both. I wouldn't want to be wealthy. That shit is too trapping. But let's continue.
The Trump administration, the Republican Party, and a good bit of the Democratic Party, too, currently act as though capitalism is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And if you are going to...
Okay, so here's the thing. Seeing that most of the Communist or Socialist Party is fucking... he did that shit on purpose. I don't care what you say. He did that shit on purpose. Because bread tube exists, he did that shit on purpose. But let's continue.
To admit that it has problems, you locate them elsewhere. You know, immigrants are somehow causing whatever difficulties we have. Or unfair trading partners in China or elsewhere are causing all the trouble. If only we became more nationalistic, if we had a pure American capitalism, well then, there would be no problem because the capitalist system is always left uncriticized.
The cynicism that is dripping from his lips is fucking awesome. Like, it's quite literally awesome. But I'm gonna say this. Like, yes, this is what you see with fucking capitalism, and where you actually get the well, is this reason why? Is that reason why? No, you can only grow yourself so much in the system where it's finite growth. You can only grow yourself so much. That's why you saw with the video that I did with Mark Blight. He said that the fucking banks, they actually got to the point where you couldn't grow past a certain amount, and so they wanted to nationalize the market. Which one did I have? Did I have the cavalry? Okay, no, aggression. Okay, cool. But they couldn't grow, so they try to do the trick of actually getting markets elsewhere. But at a certain point, you won't get any more markets elsewhere. Yeah, that's a new car. But let's continue.
Unfound wanting, and hence no exhaustive self-examination is really allowed. It's celebration time, not criticism time. Socialism, for a whole host of historical reasons, does not have that luxury, and that's a good thing for the development of socialism. So where does the critique go? It goes as follows. Socialism focused on what we might call the macro level of society, the big picture. And in that process, it decided that the problems of capitalism that socialism would remedy were the following two basic ones. Number one, by leaving factories, stores, farms, offices in the hands of a few people, the owners of businesses, the boards of directors of big corporations, a tiny minority of our people, what would happen is that the economic system would be controlled by them for their own benefit.
All right, so let's just address this. So, socialism part 1, which is what people want to point to in a lot of cases, is where it was the government takes over things, and you see a lot of the Soviet Union was actually considered a socialist fucking goddamn, how do I get back over that? Was considered socialist, but it really wasn't, and we've had that discussion about that with Professor Wolff before, where it wasn't really socialist. What happened was it was just really a way of saying that, hey, the state was basically took the place of capitalism. And so you also see, just it's that conflation that we just saw with the previous video that we did with them about communists and socialists are the same thing, where effectively socialists just wanted to have it where, work and control.
So that the people at the top would become the most wealthy, which they kind of have, and the most powerful, which they kind of have. And so the socialists reasoned that the way to deal with this problem was to take the property in means of production, factories, offices, and all of that, and transfer it from private individuals enriching themselves because of their positions, and give it instead to the state to manage these properties, these productive properties, in the interest of the whole society, hence the very name, socialism. And the second thing socialism would do would stop using markets as the way to distribute things.
So, and this is where you get the whole state run, and yeah. So you get the whole, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I don't destroy myself and shit. And you get the state run different things, and you get you get the government controlling things, and you get how where basically capital was replaced. So let's continue.
And the reasoning of socialists there was always very simple. Markets allocate things that are produced or resources to the people with the most money. And for socialists, this made no sense at all, since the rich at the top, who own everything, are the ones with the most money. So once again, the system benefits them because they're in a position in markets to dominate. Just like they're in a position everywhere else because they own the means of production, once again, to dominate. So the socialists said, let's not have markets, let's have the government distribute goods and services and resources in a democratic way rather than using the market.
All right, you know what, guys? It's getting late, and I am I want to actually get to do a couple other things. I thank everybody who's watched. I will be streaming at 7 tomorrow. I will be on time, like I was sort of on time today. So I will talk to you guys tomorrow, and I want to thank everybody who's watched. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Peace.